Hello and welcome back to the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be reflecting on the 1-1 draw against Man United, probably the most one-sided game I've seen this season. We're also going to look ahead to Brighton tomorrow evening. There's lots to talk about in this episode. Got Craig and Dan joining me. Craig, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Mike. Very good.
Good stuff. Dan, you all right?
I'm all right. I've got terrible sore throat, so if I sound a bit deeper than usual, that's why.
No worries, mate. Just before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Elam Road on Twitter and at Elam Road Pod on Instagram. Let's start with Tweet of the Week. There are a few candidates this week, couple of messages in our group chat, but I think the top of the list is definitely Championship JC asking, celebrating a draw, fan base stuck in League One. That was pathetic. In a way, I don't agree with him saying that the fan base is pathetic, Craig. But in a way, it's a difficult one. And we're going to get onto it about sort of the nature of the result, given the chances that we had and given how dominant we were. I do understand the frustrations with it being a point. I think we all left the ground, and I think I can speak for you guys as well. And it kind of felt like a loss a little bit, Craig. But given that we would have taken a point going into the game, it's, in the grand scheme of things, a valuable point.
Oh, yeah. Before the game, everyone's gone into it expecting the worst, unfortunately, based on our recent run of form. So to be able to come out of the game having picked up a point in the grand scheme of things is brilliant for us, especially against, I know they're an out of sorts United team, but against that Big Six team. But I know we're going to go on to it, but yeah, to batter them the way we did and only come out with a point and almost come out with nothing was it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. Dan, let's just move on. Let's go on to United. First of all, initial reaction to the result from you.
I mean, the fact that they scored so late on and then we came back, it made the draw slightly easier to take, I think, because, we all sat there for a couple of minutes thinking that obviously they were, sitting in the thoughts that we had just lost that game. And that would have been criminal, to be honest. I thought Man United were terrible. I think the celebratory mood coming out of it is more to celebrate seeing a Brentford performance that we haven't seen in several months, seeing the team that we recognise from, past seasons. Because on another day, I think it's very hard to criticise a team for that performance. On another day, we would have won 3-4-0 again like we did last year. It felt like it wasn't going to go our way. I kept saying Man United are going to score at some point if we don't keep taking these chances, but they never really improved. It just carried on. So it should give us hope. Obviously, we still need points and we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, but I think that's where the happiness is coming from, just seeing a Brentford performance that we hadn't seen in so long.
Yeah, 31 shots on goal, 85 touches in their box, post or crossbar 4 times. Craig, how did you feel when they scored?
I think this was a unanimous decision across the GTEC, watching people. As soon as they went 1-0 up, I feel like everyone's gone, well, you bloody knew that was happening.
Yeah.
We've absolutely battered them. I looked at my dad, who stood next to me, and my little brother stood next to me and go, you could have called that. You could have called that after 20 minutes of this game when we're battering them, that they're going to nick it 1-0. It was a bit heartbreaking, but I pops up at the right place at the right time. But fantastic work from Ivan Toney. I know we're going to move on to him, but fantastic work from him to get the ball down and across.
Yeah,
it was going from how have we lost this game? How have we not won this game? To how have we lost this game? Back to how have we not won this game? And it was like it was just those final few minutes were a proper roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. I think from that first half, Dan, the one that stands out, and I know we were kind of all over them for the whole game, but the one chance that would have probably had the highest XG was Tony's 1-on-1. I think he has to bury it. I mean, he hits the post, so it's technically off target. But just in terms of Tony's performance in general, much more at the levels that we've become accustomed to expecting from him. I think that game, maybe the Forest game as well, although I think United's game, that was the best we've seen from him since he's been back. And I know that he played well against Forest, but in terms of dominating that forward line, being so pivotal to basically everything that we did going forward, I think that was the best that we've seen from him. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think normally he would score that chance as well, I think. That was the only sort of down part of his game that he missed a couple of chances. But generally, he was much more involved. It probably helps having the players around you all stepping up as well. Because I think we saw it at the England game that he played. I thought he linked really well with, the star players around him there. So, yeah, it was definitely his best performance, at least for Brentford in a few weeks. So hopefully he can keep pushing on, and he can repeat that. And hopefully with Brian back now as well, it's the first time in about a year that we can now hopefully see them both together from the start. And that should hopefully benefit both of them.
Yeah, we'll get on to sort of where Brian comes into the team, especially given Wissa's performance on the weekend. But just on England, Craig, because we haven't recorded since Ivan played, I was kind of surprised to see how many people didn't realise that Ivan Toney could hold the ball up and actually bring others into play. A lot of pundits, YouTubers, people that comment on football were watching that game and saying, I didn't realise Toney had this to his game, where we've kind of been talking about it for over a year now. But just your thoughts on Toney scoring for England. I mean, first ever Brentford player to score for England. I was happy for the club. I wasn't really happy for him individually. But what did you think, Craig?
I wouldn't say I wasn't happy for him individually, but antics off the pitch aside, but besides maybe one or two shocking performances he's put in the last sort of 5-6 games for us, he completely warrants the opportunity to play for England. And having had the opportunity to lead the line, he's taken the ball by the horns, put the ball on the spot, and put it in the back of the net, and it's what he does best. To people saying that they didn't know he had it, that's just the typical football fan who only watches Big Six teams, doesn't really get to see what else is about. But he does it every week in, week out. That's his game. That's what he does perfectly. He does it to a T every week. Even in the games where he's not playing fantastically, his hold-up play is always top-notch.
Do you think it's now a straight shootout between Watkins or Toney, or do you see Southgate maybe taking both, Craig?
I don't see him taking both, because I watching both of the games, I felt like when Watkins was leading the line against Brazil, the way we wanted to play, it wasn't suiting him. We're a team that like to get the ball forward into a striker who can hold the ball up and play it off of the striker. And Harry Kane does it fantastically because he drops into that 10 so many times in a game to bring others into it. Watkins is a play to striker, whereas England need a play through striker. So they need a Harry Kane or an Ivan Toney. But, and I said this before, Southgate loves Ivan Toney for whatever reason, so he'll be going anyway. Don't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously dependent on whether he's still at Brentford by the time the Euros comes around, but it would still be cool if he was at Brentford to see an England player representing Brentford at a World Cup, at a international tournament, sorry. Let's go back to the game, Dan. I think the Zanka chance, I was going to talk about all the kind of woodwork efforts without because I feel like I've seen the highlights so many times now, and it just makes me angry watching the amount of chances that we spurned. But the Zanka one for me at the back post almost has too much time to think about it. The fact that he's unchallenged as well, he's got like all the time in the world to place the perfect header, and he gets it marginally wrong. But just on that chance, Zanka's performance as a whole, honestly, when he's on the ball, it makes me really nervous. He sometimes he looks like a deer in the headlights when he's on the ball. But in terms of defensively, and I think that you can speak for the whole back line, and we're going to get onto Collins and Ayer, who I thought were both fantastic as well. But just Zanka's performance, the chance that he missed, what do you think of it, Dan?
I think he was a bit better. I think with the chance, I think he did what he should have done. So guide it back to where it came from almost. So obviously it came across to him, guide it back into the other corner. I think he's just quite unlucky to hit the bar. That's why I'm saying like this game could have been very different on another day. I thought his general play was also better. It wasn't, I'm not going to say he was spraying out passes left, right, and centre, but it was better. I thought defensively as a team we were better. I don't think anyone on the pitch really had a bad game. Yeah, so it's definitely progress, and I'd like to see more. But I don't know if the way Man United were playing was playing into our hands a bit. They seemed to want to play on the counter-attack against Brentford. And obviously, normally teams like, the top 5 or 6, they need to be having the ball against us. That's how they cause problems. They can put us under constant pressure if they wanted to, but it was very strange how they were going about it. Very strange, because they were on good form going into that game.
It's a difficult one because, like, coming into the game, Man United were, like you said, in good form off the back of that 4-3 result against Liverpool, Craig. And coming into the game on our side, we were 3 wins in 19 or something stupid like that. So I was so surprised to see how one-sided the game was, and it kind of points to a point that I've got a bit later on down the running order, but we tackle it now. I wonder how much we can take from the result, considering how poor United were. It was definitely a game that we were going to be up for, and we knew the atmosphere would be good. But I was just surprised, considering the first half was so dominant from us. I was half expecting them to the second half to be quite different, or Ten Hag to go in at half time and be like, we need to get control of this game. But it was just the same thing all over again for the next 45 minutes. So we'll stave off the Brighton chat for now, but just how much can you take from that performance if you really single it out, and considering how many shots United concede in a lot of games, like it's been made as big media top line, that United are constantly conceding shots in the games that they play. So with that in mind, like, how much can you take from the result?
So I just want to kind of touch on 2 things. So firstly, one point you mentioned was I thought the atmosphere on Saturday night was actually fantastic down there.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the best we've had this season, or if not the best we've had this season. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. So kudos to everyone on that point. Secondly, I don't think. Say again.
Apart from the East Stand.
Apart from the East Stand, that's a totally different conversation, isn't it? I don't think the result is what we should be focusing on in this case. Obviously, to go from how have we not won to how have we lost, back to how have we not won. I came out and I said in our group chat how good it felt coming out of that game, having actually performed well, and not come out of it thinking, oh God, like we're never going to win again. But I'll come out of that game thinking, if we can kick on and play the way we're playing from this, we'll be more than safe, because we'll pick up a sufficient amount of points between now and the end of the season playing the way we played.
Yeah, for sure. I want to come back to you about Yarmo in midfield, Craig, because I know you're a big fan of his. So I think you'll have been a big fan of his game on Saturday. But just before that, Dan, I want to talk about the goal. Obviously, Tony's build-up play in creating the goal was really good. Martinez had an absolute shocker, to be honest. When he came on, he looked so rusty. But I think Aya's finish is actually quite underrated as well. He's got 2 in 2 now because he scored against Burnley as well. But I wouldn't have been surprised, Dan, to see him place that over from 6 yards out, especially for a centre half. But he actually just produces quite a cultured finish under Onana. So yeah. What do you think of that goal for the Tony build-up? To be honest, and it was really annoying as well, because I didn't even celebrate that goal because I thought Tony was offside in the build-up. Just another point that VAR should be completely scrapped. Because I didn't even celebrate it because I thought Tony might have been offside, but thankfully it wasn't. But yeah, thoughts on our goal, Dan?
I did, so I'm glad it went ruled out. Well, we've criticised the team a lot this season for how they react to conceding. So to do that on this occasion, a couple of minutes later, after battering them, it must have been so disheartening. Obviously, we were very disheartened. And you can't deny that Ivan Toney has the quality and the ability under pressure. Many players would have just tried to get a shot away, or, given it away, or panicked in that situation. But he remained very, very calm. He knew exactly what he was doing. There was 2-3 Man United players around him, and he put it back into the perfect area. I think from there you do expect Aya to score, but obviously you still got to give him credit for putting it away, because again it is a pressure scenario. But yeah, 2 goals in 2. I mean, in general, obviously we're saying about how Man United were playing, but the stats from that game are not just good for Brentford. They were one of the best Premier League performances of the season. I think only Man City ever in the Premier League have had more touches in the opposition's box than Brentford. I think they've had 87 twice, and then we're third now on the all-time list on 81 or whatever it was. So, I mean, that is quite insane if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely, wonder, because I said at halftime, the best performance we've seen since Fulham away, but I didn't think we were that good at Fulham away. We got gifted a couple of goals. It was best performance of the season, I reckon, Craig.
I thought that we actually, and a lot of people have said it, we performed better on Saturday than when we beat them 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
Yeah.
that we were brilliant on Saturday, and Dan has said it sometimes. It's just we were so unlucky, and I think it's dumb luck for United that they've walked away with a point almost all three. And Jamie Redknapp said post match that it would have been criminal if they'd have won that game, and it would have.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely would have.
They had a better keeper this time round.
Yeah. Talk to me about Yarmo in midfield, Craig, because a lot of noise. Obviously, Christian Norgard came into the game injured, so we're not starting with our captain. Yarmo, who we were raving about at the start of the season, but he hasn't really managed to kind of sustain or cement his starting place in the 11. But he comes into the game yesterday off the back of, I don't know if you guys watched the Yarmo kind of like special on Brentford's YouTube channel that I thought was absolutely brilliant from the club's media team. Kind of a dive into him moving over from Ukraine and stuff. But I think from that video especially, there's a lot of people within the club that think this guy has a really high ceiling and he's only going to get better from what he is now. But I think his performance on Saturday was just some of the touches that he had, quite slick with the ball. He's a bit of Jensen and a bit of Norgard in that he likes to get stuck in and press like Norgard does, but he also is quite silky in the way that Jensen can spray passes and get out of tight situations. So yeah, talk to me about his performance, Craig.
Because he's so, in my head, because he's so young, he plays with no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he can come into a game. He did it at Liverpool away earlier in the season when we lost 3-0, and people were ranting and raving about him. Then every time he comes onto the pitch, people just love the way he plays. And for someone so young in the Premier League against an established side, big side like United, to be able to just control the game, he controlled the flow of the game for a lot of it. Being able to pick the ball up and progress forwards is so many ways and so many times in which he did. I was a little bit surprised when Thomas Frank actually took him off, because I thought that he was actually the one that was dictating the play more than anyone else in our team. Mm-hmm. I don't see how he's not involved more from next season, because I see some players kind of moving on and moving out of the team as well. I think that he's got such a high ceiling. If he even has the ceiling at all, like he could be our next thing, but we need to keep hold of him for as long as we can. He was fantastic. He was my player of the match on Saturday. I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know if he's my player of the match. I think the defending, I think that was his best game since he's been back sort of fully fit. I think Collins also was really good, or doing the Nathan Collins thing of either really good or really bad. But from watching the video that Brentford put out on their YouTube channel, I think it was weird because obviously he's got quite a unique story in that he moved from Ukraine to London and with all that's going on in Ukraine at the moment. But it was kind of, I don't know, it's like they were almost touting him as the next big talent to come out of the Brentford B team. And I think we know that already, but I was just surprised to see such a big feature piece on him. And he kept on saying, like, I just want to focus on playing as many games for Brentford and playing in the Premier League. So I think there are clearly people at the club who think that he could go on to big things. So long may his form continue, and I hope to see him against Brighton. Let's go on to Wissa, Dan, who I thought was again brilliant. I mean, I'm going through sort of 1 to 11, but everyone to a man was amazing on Saturday. But Wissa, I thought, it's difficult because I think we've spoken about it on the pod before, whether we think he's better as a starter or better as a sub. But I think in recent weeks, to be fair to him, he's been good as both. And I thought maybe when he got hooked, he looked a bit disappointed to get hooked. But there is a thing with Wissa. It's like, because he presses so much, sort of around 60 minutes, he looks absolutely knackered. So I'm sort of looking at him with one thought, like, yeah, I know you're pissed off to be coming off, but at the same time, you look absolutely puffing. So it's difficult not to hook him. I thought maybe he could have hooked KLP instead of Wissa when Brian came on. But having said that, KLP had a great game as well, so it would have been harsh either way. But just thoughts on Wissa's performance, Dan, because I think it's a few games now, and he's one of those players that fans can sometimes find frustrating. Very much a confidence player, and very much a player that if his first touch isn't great or his second pass isn't great, then he might not have a good game. But when he's on it like he was on Saturday, he's a nuisance. He holds the ball up so well. He can pick a pass. And I would have actually said that Tony chance in the first half, you'd rather have Witter running onto that than Tony running onto that, because I think Witter is better in those kind of keeper on striker situations.
Yeah, I think since he's come back from AFCON, really, he just looks more fresh, which is quite strange considering he played a lot of football at that tournament. He probably played more football than any Brentford player in that time. So, yeah, he looks very good. I think you could kind of see it coming, him coming off when Mbeumo was getting ready. I think if you put Mbeumo at wing back, that might limit him slightly. I think whoever you put a wing back out of those attackers, it might limit them slightly. So I think that's more of our issues with the formation. But yeah, he was very good, and I hope that he doesn't lose his place too much in the coming weeks now, because if we continue to play a 5, you can expect Mbeumo to come back in. So starts might be more limited for him. So I hope it doesn't interfere with his momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost nailed on that we'll play a 5 against Brighton, considering the way they play. Especially, we're going to go on to sort of the reverse fixture and how dominant they were in that game. But even Wisser's chance in the second half, that was one of the woodwork efforts, wasn't it? The volley that he had, I think it like skimmed off the post. That would have been incredible. But he does have a knack for these kind of acrobatic finishes. I think he actually tried another one where the bicycle kick or the scissor kick wasn't on, and he just went for it anyway. It's just like he's now just living off that Chelsea goal. Anytime he gets any kind of sniff at an opportunity to do a bicycle kick, he will take it. But yeah, he was really good. And it is a talking point about, how Brian's now back. It looks like he's back fit, where Witter fits into the team if we're going to play in a 5. But I'm not sure too much conversation about that with regards to like the run-in is too relevant, considering we're just now in the points business as opposed to the performance business. Flecken, let's give some love to Flecken, Craig, because I thought his distribution at times last night was immense. There was so much space on the pitch due to the way United set up. And KLP and Mads were always in space, and he was really good at sort of, to be fair, we were just great at playing out from the back. I wasn't nervous to the extent that I am normally when we're playing out from the back. Flecken always seems so calm on the ball, and when he's spraying those passes out to KLP or Mads and it breaks a counter, it was just a weird pattern to play that I haven't seen at all this season when we're trying to play out from the back, and that we'd beat their press, knock it out to the other side, and then we go up and start an attack. And it was just it was weird to see. But give some love to Flecken, Craig, because I know you love to.
I still rate him. I think ever since we knocked him against Forest, when he dropped to his knees for their first goal, and everyone was saying it looked like he kind of just watched it sail past him. When realistically it was actually a great goal. When you watch it back, it was a great goal, nestled right in the bottom corner through a lot of bodies. Ever since we've knocked him since then, I think he's been fantastic. I think he's been brilliant. I've actually never questioned his distribution. He had one little slip, I think it was against like West Ham, and he still got the ball away. But I've never questioned his distribution. I've always thought it's been brilliant. But ever since we've had Ivan back, he now has a focal point up front, which means the long kicks that he was doing before Ivan was there are now looking a lot better because there is a big centre-forward player for him to aim at. But he had to do that in the first place anyway. So people were knocking him for the distribution back then, when realistically, he's doing the exact same thing now. The only difference is Ivan Toney is playing up top. And he, as we've just touched on earlier on, has fantastic hold-up plays to be able to bring others into it. So that hasn't changed. His distribution's always been brilliant. Never worry about that. That City game, obviously, he had a blinder in that City game, and he made a cracking save. Was it Højlund? Højlund goes through one-on-one. Everyone stopped, put their arm in the air as if to say he was offside, and he pulls out a cracking save to keep it at 0-0. And he is now starting to impact the results that we're having, which is what we were saying the issue was before. Because he doesn't make that save, we go 1-0 down. I don't know how quickly we come back. Obviously, in injury time, it was a totally different scenario in my mind. We just kind of had to go for it. We didn't have any choice. We would have had time then. So it would have been different. But I've never had issue with his distribution, and I think he's been he's probably been one of our standout players the last sort of 5-6 games.
Yeah, I find it funny. I was at the game and kind of watching the back Hoyland's chants, and whenever Flecken makes a big save now, the media team at Brentford really do gas him up because I think they've realised kind of how much stick he was getting from fans at the start of the season. So whenever he makes kind of any save, even though it was a really good save against Hoyland in this case, but whenever he makes any save, the media team are always all over it. So props to him. He's really turning it around. I think that performance against Man City was a turning point in his season. Speaking of turning points, Dan, I think, and we can link this to the Brighton chat now, because I think that has to be a turning point in our season. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about I don't know how much we can take out of the performance considering it was against United, and they have been prone to like sort of being in these kinds of games this season where they're under the cosh and they concede a lot of chances and a lot of touches in their box, etc. But for me, if we were to go out against Brighton on Wednesday and it be a complete the same game as it was when we played them at the Amex, it would not be good. It would really not be good to go from the back of a really good performance against Man United where we should have got the win and then to get dominated by Brighton. I don't know how you feeling about it.
I think they can be a bit of a strange team too. I think, especially recently, I think they make a lot of changes to their team. I think they switch the keepers every other game. So I think, especially in the last few months, that they either turn up and do really well or they can get absolutely tanked. So it's a difficult one to predict in that sense. Obviously, you expect them to have more of the ball than we did against Man United. But we've shown that we can put in a level of performance now. Man United, as much as we are saying, maybe it's Man United not being very good, they are sixth in the table. They are the table, they've won enough points this season to be above Brighton. So again, under the lights, hopefully the atmosphere is good. I don't see why we can't aim to get something again. And I don't see why we won't get at least another point out of it.
Craig, I want to talk about the reverse fixture because we had some chat about it after the game. But just before then, just to wrap up the kind of United chat, any thoughts on Neil's off the pitch antics this week? The Scott McTominay tweet, the Luke Littler tweet, which I found hilarious as well. He is really buying into this character now. I feel like he's fully converted into the Premier League villain, and I love it. I love him for it.
I'm now seeing people coming around to the idea of it. Well, I've actually seen more people in support of the fact that he is this shithouse character on social media saying it brings a bit of character back to football. People are enjoying it, and I do quite like it as well. It's funny, people are saying Luke Littler's only 17. If you're going to insert yourself into a conversation, he's big enough and ugly enough to be able to take the brief that Neil is going to give him. So. Yeah, and that's a figure of speech before people start saying I'm insulting Luke Littler. By the way, it's a figure of speech. Yeah, I'm here for it. Love it. I think it's brilliant.
100%. I was going to talk about away fans in the home end. I know that everyone's kind of seen the videos of when Mount scored the goal, and there's about 10 bodies in the East Stand that jump up and kind of celebrating and stuff. Thing is, we've kind of talked about it before. There's not really anything more to add. These games against against these top six sides, there are going to be people in the ground that are supporting the top six side. I don't think you can get away from that. We just haven't got enough Brentford fans to fill those seats. So it kind of pisses me off because in a way Brentford have kind of taken the piss out of. But you what can you say to it? It's just like we don't have enough fans to fill the ground. So there's going to be
eventually we'll be like Fulham and have a neutral end.
Yeah, oh God. Please, no. Please.
Basically,
no.
is the neutral end the East End.
Yeah, it's a neutral end, yeah.
But yeah,
there's anyone who willingly has a season ticket or a ticket in the East Stand.
I've never sat in the East Stand. It's the only stand I've not sat in.
I sat in it once. Do not do it. I
wouldn't do it. I've tried all the others. I wouldn't do that one.
But yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say on that. Really, it's obviously not nice to see. But we're in the West Stand. Well, you're in the North Stand, aren't you, Dan?
Yeah, but I have sat in the South and the West for cup games and stuff. But yeah, I would never sit in the East Stand.
But yeah, the atmosphere in the West Stand on Saturday night was particularly good, and I like you said, Craig, I'd maybe even Bournemouth at home, sort of the last time I heard it that loud. But it was constant singing throughout the game. So like props to the fans. We have to give it to them. It was Saturday night under the lights. I think I kind of half expected it after the international break, and with it being Man United, that it would be a really good atmosphere. But obviously the way that we played into that and made it even better. Let's talk about the reverse fixture, Craig, because obviously the game changed when Brian was hooked and we had a conversation about it. But from there on, it felt to me as if that game against Brighton was somehow 10 against 11. Like the patterns of play that they were producing, the space that they had in between passes, we were just chasing shadows the whole game. And I know that it hinged on Brian going off and we kind of lost our threat and we were probably more even up until he came off. But just thoughts on the reverse game. And I know you've touched on it, Dan, about how Brighton have been quite up and down since then. But that reverse game was a little bit, to me, I think that was a sort of point where I realised these injuries are really bad, especially against these sides that like to play football and will have most of the ball for most of the game.
First things first, the traffic on that day was horrendous. Anyone who went down to that game will know that it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. We said it in our chat again about how it was, and yeah, up until Brian gets injured, we're probably level, if not on top of them at that point. And that was the injury that broke the horse's back. Do you know what I mean? That everything just kind of went downhill ever since Brian got injured. But I kind of want to say that this is an opportunity for us to get 3 points. Huge opportunity for us to get 3 points at home again under the lights. They've not been on the greatest run of form in the Premier League. Obviously, they've only won once, from what I can see, in about 6 games as well, and that was beating Forest. They lost 3-0 at home to Fulham. They drew at home to Everton. They lost 4-0 to Luton recently, didn't they, as well? So it's a huge opportunity for us to get 3 points. Whether we turn up and play the way we did, I'll get on Saturday. It's a totally different story. But yeah, Brighton away, it was a weird one. When Brian got injured, that was it. Everything just kind of fell apart.
Dan, does it kind of, given the performance on Saturday, and I know you're one to normally err on the side of caution, but my final question, I think, does it kind of become a must-win in a way? Do you know where I'm coming from with the question, though, considering how good the performance was? Like, you need to capitalize on it to kind of kickstart the momentum for the rest of the run-in.
Yes, but everyone below us is still losing.
Yeah,
none of them can seem to string a win together. So, unless they start winning, we might be okay. Obviously, we don't want to rely on that at all. And I still think, I thought 3 wins before the United game. So, maybe 2 wins, 2 draws now. And if you look at even the fixtures we've got left, I would still rate our chances higher against Sheffield United at home, for example. It's still probably one of our slightly more difficult games if you look at all the games you've got left. So I don't think it's a must win. Obviously, it's a game that we'd all really like to win. Yeah. I don't think it's the right phrase to use. I think all the teams below us, even at the weekend, they just can't seem to win. And we don't seem to be getting any closer to that relegation zone, no matter what we do at the moment. Obviously, I hope that carries on. But, at some point you would have thought they would start winning. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think more what I meant by the kind of must win, it's just what it would do for the players in terms of getting that confidence boost after playing so well against United and battering them the way we did for 90 minutes. If they were to go out on Wednesday and put in a performance of intent and maybe win 2-0 or win comfortably, just in terms of the confidence for the players, it would be absolutely huge for the rest of the run-in. Craig, you're smiling, so come in.
I'm just thinking of prior to the Burnley one where we couldn't decide whether it was a must win or a must not lose. I don't think we could consider this a must win. Like Dan said, other results have been incredibly favourable for us over this 20-game period, to the point only Burnley have got more points than us over the last 5 games, and that's because they beat us. Everyone else. So in us down to Sheffield United, so 6 teams, all have got 2 points in 5 games, bar Burnley, who are on 5 points because they beat us. So Dan is completely right that although we've been pretty bad, people are not realizing that other teams around us are also pretty bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of this season has not been our form will keep us up. Other people's form will keep us up. Other teams' form will keep us up. So Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, Forest, Everton losing is what will keep us up, not us winning.
Yeah, 100%. I think that would be a good point to wrap things up, boys. Bit of a shorter episode today, but the Ealing Road podcast will be back this week with a Brighton recap and also a Villa preview, probably condensed into the same episode, given the short back gap between fixtures. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. Just before we go, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Brighton game tomorrow night. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Gents, it has been a pleasure. I shall see you on Wednesday.
Up the bees.
Up the bees.